When you're talking to boards, we have to present it in a way that's very non-technical, hits the things that they care about in a way that this modernization makes sense for them.
Welcome to This Week Health. Today we're continuing our six-part series on the Zero Trust Hospital, the CXO Vision. It's a new book by Zscaler. I have one of the authors, Tamer Baker, the healthcare CTO for Zscaler, here with me. I'm Drex DeFord, president of Cyber and Risk at This Week Health and the 229 Project. Tamer, thanks for dropping in on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Drex. Always a pleasure working with you.
We've done several of these episodes now. I've had a ton of fun. I've learned a lot too. We have some other folks who are lurking in the wings who have been watching us pull these things together. They're telling me that they're learning stuff too. So that's great. Episode 6, how to promote a zero trust culture. This is the big thing. Culture is super tough, right? Really a challenge in healthcare. How do healthcare leaders effectively communicate the strategic and the financial value of zero trust to their boards and their peers and other execs?
Yeah, there are actually a couple of sections within the book that we talk about all the business values that come along with zero trust, financial being one of them, of course, operational efficiency is another one, et cetera. When you're thinking about a conversation with the board, there's a number of things that we talk about in the book and get more specific details on, but it's really some very high level things that you can address with a board member because a board member is not technical, right? For the most part, we all know every once in a while you run into somebody that can be a little dangerous with their questions, but for the
Mhm.
most part, we have to put this in terms that are not technical. And by the way, for those of you that haven't seen our book, we do have a reference for how you talk to board members with zero trust. And it's actually a book written for board members. Actually, you can get another copy of that book and give it to your board members if you're having these
Right.
conversations. So I do have to plug that real quick, which we give you a link to that in this book as well as elsewhere. But when we think about what a board cares about, finance is one of the big things they care about. So when we think, how do I communicate this to them? It is going to be the business value assessment side of the house. Where can we save financially, both operationally, so both CapEx and OpEx, as well as brand reputation is important, right? So a board does care about that, where we show them and talk to them about how this actually reduces risk to make sure we're not on the news page, to make sure you're not dealing with legal and everything else for the next breach. Those are really important topics. And then they do care about patient care as well and patient health. So we talk about if we're helping the clinicians be more efficient with using this architecture, this helps generate more income. There's a couple ways we talked about it, but it also gives a better patient experience. So these are some of the high level things. We go into more details in the books, but when you're talking to boards, we have to present it in a way that's very non-technical, hits the things that they care about in a way that this modernization makes sense for them.
You do have these other books, the book for the board, really great material because you've presented to boards, I've presented to boards. You never know if you're going to have somebody from a technology company who's really smart and going to ask a lot of hard questions, or if you have a professional golfer on the board who doesn't have any technology experience, but they're curious and they're interested
Yeah.
and they want to learn. So, yeah, figuring out how to engage the board, critically important. Other key stakeholders as you get into this, there will be internal stakeholders across the board. Talked about how to talk to the board. How do you talk to the internal stakeholders? How do you communicate the value to them?
Yeah, this is a very critical step in any kind of a digital monetization project. We have to have everybody on board with this, and we keep using the same word board, no pun intended on that. But if you're a CIO, you have to have conversations with your CISO and your CTO teams and your digital application teams, et cetera, and making sure they're on board with this. And when you have the conversations, we've actually laid it out in the book on these are the things that a CISO cares about, and here's how you communicate with them. Here's all the things that a chief nursing officer cares about or a chief medical officer cares about. How do you communicate these values and benefits to them? They're not going to care about reducing risk and infrastructure savings, all that stuff. That goes out the window. It's a better clinician experience for your people, right? They're going to have better access, easier access. It's all seamless. It's all in the background. They're not going to know the difference. Even if they have a mediocre health because maybe they shouldn't have access to something, we're still going to let them have read-only access and they can still operate versus completely shutting them off. But at the same time, we're protecting you as a clinician from that ransomware event where everybody goes to paper and pen. And now labs becomes a problem, imaging becomes a problem, everything
Right.
else. We're trying to stop that from happening. So we talk about the different leaders within an organization that all kind of fall in line and get on board with this transformation effort because it benefits you and it benefits you and it benefits you and it benefits you. And we've actually outlined how it benefits different folks so that make your job easier for this communication.
Yeah. Important for the board, important for the internal stakeholders. I love the idea of the book helping folks understand how to craft the message for a particular audience and how important that is when you're trying to tell a story. And then there's like this whole idea of zero trust and how zero trust can make it easier to do things, big projects, mergers and acquisitions. We can
Mhm.
just start there. We touch on that in an earlier episode, but let's just talk about mergers and acquisitions for a minute. It's going on all over the place now. It doesn't have to be a big health system buying a big health system. A lot of times this is buying a practice or buying an imaging center or something like that for a health system. How do you guys help with that? How does Zero Trust help with that?
It's a great time to bring M&A into this conversation because there isn't a single board that I've talked to that hasn't told me we were breached from an M&A. The acquiring entity brought something into us.
Hmm.
Literally every board I've ever talked to has made that same comment. So M&A is a big factor in this, whether you're talking to a board and you want to talk about risk, like that is another piece of conversation if you're an acquiring type of an entity. As well as when you think about an M&A transaction, everybody is involved. It's painful for everybody from the CIO to the CISO to the CTO to your chief medical officer, your human resources, legal, doesn't matter, everybody's impacted by this M&A. So when we think about the role Zero Trust plays into this, there's two key elements that I'll say. One, it drastically reduces the time to value. Once you've gotten this in place, and we talked in earlier episodes about once this is there, you can innovate faster, you can bring new ideas in, you can bring new applications, new things into your environment a lot faster because these things can get connected much quicker and easier. M&A is the same. I don't have to deconflict networks because the network is abstracted from Zero Trust, right? I don't have to do all this deduplication. I can actually connect users to applications on both sides of the house on day one. We've helped probably 350 or so organizations through M&A, many of them in the healthcare space as well. By day one, you've already interconnected users and applications and users to the different data sources that they need to talk to versus waiting 3, 6, 9 months to make that
And This
interconnect.
this is
Yeah.
what holds up the show, right? When you make these deals, your goal in making the deal, the M&A
Yeah.
deal, is that I need the ROI as quickly as I can possibly
Right.
get it. And I don't have time. I'm in a big hurry. And the result sometimes is, again, back to this, I try to figure out how to do it with the stuff that I have, which leaves a lot of broken glass that I have to go clean up. And that broken glass is going to cut me when it comes to a cybersecurity
You have the
incident.
TSA requirements. You have deadlines.
Zero Trust helps get around that.
Yeah, it's not only are we getting the faster ROI, the second point to it is you're getting everybody connected securely. So now you're making sure ransomware isn't coming in with them. Even if a credential was phished or at some point in the past, like all that stuff doesn't matter. We're making this connectivity happen to where you're now safer. So you're doing it faster, you're getting an ROI much quicker, and now you're doing it safer. So that M&A story resonates across all the different levels of conversations that you need to have from the board on down when you're thinking about how to promote this zero trust culture. Guess what? It's going to help us do this too. So your CFO is happy, your chief medical officer is happy, HR and legal are happy because even pre-day zero, when we're doing due
Yeah.
diligence, I can connect HR and legal to be able to information share as needed, right? So there's a lot of happy people when it comes to an M&A story. And that messaging is in this book too, on how you promote that culture within the different parts of your organization, incorporating M&As into that messaging.
Yeah, I love that story. I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit more about it. That internal advocacy, once you get started, it usually starts small, but as more and more people realize what's happening and they
Mhm.
are happy with it and they tell others, you create this avalanche
Yeah.
effect with Zero Trust too. You have other examples of that kind of
Yeah.
avalanche that happened?
So we've talked about visibility in a previous episode, right? And the unprecedented amount of visibility on how everything is connecting to everything else, et cetera. One of these things that have snowballed into having this communication with other parts of your organization is help desk. It's a term that I'm calling mean time to innocence because I'm a recovering network engineer. So before I moved into security and CTO space, et cetera, I was a network guy, and everybody always blames the network
Yeah, yeah, a lot of
for
finger
anything that's
pointing.
going wrong. It's mean time to innocence. So when we're having these conversations at this level or this part of the organization, all of a sudden it snowballs into another one because we're showing you, you know what? Here's the exact point of where you're having a problem. Your user is connected to the neighbor's Wi-Fi, or it could be your ISP, or it could be that user's browser is running at 100% of your resources because there's 180 Chrome tabs open. Whatever it may be, or sometimes it does end up being on the application side where you now have a mean time to innocence where you're resolving this stuff much faster, much quicker at tier one of help desk and help support. They have that visibility without having to escalate to your network engineers and your application teams, et cetera.
How many times have we seen these things like drag out and drag
Right.
out too with the blame game?
Yeah. So that is a snowball effect where it affected other parts of the organization without realizing that this transformation really helps all these other people too, because now we have that unprecedented visibility to be able to show you. And we even give them the ability to turn something on and tell the user, hey, before you open a ticket, you might want to check your Wi-Fi signal, right? Something along those lines, right? We
Yeah,
can tell the user something's wrong before they even know something's wrong, right?
man, it's amazing. We could go on forever. And we are going to go on a little bit longer, actually. While this wraps up our Zero Trust series, if you've missed any of the previous episodes, you can go back and catch up. All of those are available to you. So go back and watch those. They're easy, bite sized, zero trust commentary. Tamer takes us through a lot of the tough stuff, and it's all connected to the book. The book, obviously, is a very important part of this. And once you watch all those episodes and you've got the book in your hand, you can catch the conclusion of all of this in a webinar that we're going to do. You can sign up at thisweekhealth.com/zero trust. And man, I think that's going to be a really good one. Don't forget to download the book. That's the other thing. Don't
Yeah.
forget to download the book. The link will be in the show comments. So you can go out there and pull down the book to Tamer. Thanks for being on with me today. And thanks
Yeah.
to the listeners for being part of this journey. It's been quite a trip talking about zero trust.
No, thank you. We take what's historically a very difficult topic to digest, and I think we did a great job breaking this down. So I appreciate you, appreciate everything that This Week Health has done, and all your listeners. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. It was a fun time.
Thank you.